Good morning. Welcome to the Post-Farm Virtual Field Day. My name is Mike Giroux, here to represent the Durum breeding program. And if you would wander into frame, you can also see Andy Hogg, who works with me on the Durum breeding project. So what Andy and I are showing here today is on Andy's left. Andy left. Come back, Andy. You could say something. So we have a semi-dwarf type. So a semi-dwarf type is great because it has potential for increased tillers. The problem with some of these types, though, is they haven't been selected for very long and they actually have reduced yields. So varieties like Alzada. So in a really drought-prone year, Alzada, which is a semi-dwarf type, does pretty well against common varieties. But in a year like 2017, 18, 19, where we had higher yield potential, it doesn't yield as well. So what we've selected for here in Bozeman, where we don't typically have those drought years, is higher yield potential. So what's shown behind me here is the variety Divide, and then over here is the variety that we would like to name Luster, that we proposed for release, and it was released in January 2020. So Luster has higher yield potential in years that are not real drought-prone, like the last 3 years. So that's really cool. It also has the other major traits you want to see in Durum varieties. So Divide right here, it has height that is actually pretty similar to Divide, but it has a few more heads, and you can actually see that in these plots. It flowers about the same time, it matures about the same time, it really doesn't lodge, it has pretty good disease resistance. So Luster is actually looking pretty good. It is in foundation seed increase this year, and so moving towards seed availability within the next few years, and we're pretty excited about that. So what else you can see out here in this field, if you're out here with us today, is thousands of other plots. So in addition to the yield trials for advanced selections that go on throughout the state in collaboration with research center faculty, we have early generations. So the early generation lines, Andy and I will come out and screen those for flowering time, for disease resistance, for yield potential, and then we mark those that potentially have high yield under good conditions like we have here in Bozeman. And so then from there they go out throughout the state. And so when they come back, those that have high yield, we test for end product quality. They must have high protein content above the protein minimum for Durum, or 13.5% across the state. They must have good protein strength and be able to make firm pasta. They must also have bright yellow color. And so the ones that pass through that go to advanced yield trials and then get tested for pasta. And so Andy has actually spent the last 10 years working on Starch Type. Starch Type is important because it can be used to increase pasta firmness. Andy, could you give us 30 seconds on Starch Type, or a minute on Starch Type and what you've looked at?
Sure. So there's several genes that determine what kind of starch there is in this kernel. And so typically in a typical wheat kernel, there's 75% amylopectin and only 25% amylose. And so your amylopectin is your branch starch molecule. And then the amylose is more a straight chain molecule. And when you consume these, amylose is broken down by your body slower, and so you end up having a lower glycemic index and you feel fuller longer. And so what we've done is we've altered a gene to essentially increase the amount of amylose in the seeds without hopefully altering seed type too much. And after you mill those and process them, what you end up with, like Mike was talking about with pasta firmness, you actually end up with pasta that is slightly firmer than if it didn't have these mutated genes. And they were all derived from naturally occurring mutations, and there's no GMO or anything like that involved. And it has no impact on, at least like in Luster, it only has one of these genes affected, and it has no impact on agronomic traits. And so we're currently working to add another gene in without hopefully reducing the quality too much, and then that would get an even firmer product with a higher dietary fiber content and amylose content.
So we have end product quality projects like that. We also have ones to work on plant height. And so the semi-dwarfs, you can see the plot behind Andy. Sometimes in drought-prone years, those are too short, like Alzada. We're also working on genes that'll create intermediate heights, and we're having good progress with that. That's also a Montana wheat and barley funded project, and we are thankful for your support. We're also thankful for the support of Research Center faculty, without which we couldn't do our yield trials and release Durum lines. Thank you, and hope to see you actually in field in the person next summer.